Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with a Vet. I'm your hostess, Carolee. And before we get to my guest who's waiting in the wings, a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about. If you haven't heard of Grow Coffee, um, this is a coffee company that is veteran owned, and you can go to growcoffee.us to get that ordered. They do roast their own beans, and they are out of North Carolina. Super excited. Really good coffee. I did have the opportunity to taste some of it during the Mind Over Land Veterans Weekend, Veterans Day weekend gathering. So super excited for them. They're doing a great job. Additionally, a couple of books. I know I talked about this last week, but if you haven't had an opportunity yet to pick up Gunners, this is the B-29 Machine Gunners in the Korea War by James Blackwell. And really good book. He is a historian primarily on the Korean War. Go get this, check it out. Really good book. Another one is Frank DeMyth's. This is his second book. Again, this is a fiction, and it's Defending the Eagle. And really good book. I read the first and the second book within 2 days and love them. He's hoping to have a series of 7. So go check this out. It is out there on Amazon. And then a 5-star reader's favorite book. And this is by Jeffrey Sabins. You Just Survive Combat Chaos and the Quiet Battles That Follow You Home. So feel free, go check all of those out. Also, when I hit my next milestone, when we hit that 1,000 subscribers, Aegis Gun Care has provided this lovely little backpack, and it is full of some gun cleaning tools and their gun cleaning solutions as well. So really excited. They're really good too. So if that's something that interests you, make sure that you like and subscribe. Get your friends to like and subscribe as well. Okay, I think I've kind of covered pretty much everything. So without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce my guest, and that is Dan, and he is waiting patiently backstage. So help me give him a welcome. Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. A little chilly down here in the dungeon, but other than that, doing really well. How are things going for you tonight?
Not too bad. I'm very anxiously getting ready to close on a house here in about a week and a half and get moved back in, get into my own place again. And so, yeah, things are kind of crazy on my end.
Nice. It is a little nerve-wracking, isn't it? And then
Oh,
having to
yes.
get things moved and
Hmm.
yeah. Well, I wish you the best of luck, and I know you're going to enjoy it. Um, I like to start my shows off by asking a little bit about who you were as a child.
I am the oldest of 8 kids.
Okay.
I have I have uh, 3 brothers and 4 sisters.
Wow.
One of my sisters has passed away, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then I have 3 stepsisters that are also younger than I am. So I come from a very large family.
I guess so. Yeah, that's a lot. So were you studious in school? Is that something that you enjoyed?
No. My junior and senior year in high school, if it got me out of the classroom, I was involved with it. I had more absences than what anybody should have been allowed to graduate with, but I was also I was above a 3.5 my senior year, and everything that I was involved with was excused absences, from band to sports to you name it. I was involved with it.
Now, you said sports. What kind of sports did you like to play?
I mostly did cross country running and track competitive track.
Okay.
So, my favorite run was the 1500.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
Nice. Did you win any medals?
I held some regional records for a while. I missed going to state by 2/10 of a second,
Oh,
and ended up ending my running career in high school with a stress fracture in my left shin, and that blew a scholarship that I had for University of Oregon back in '91.
oh goodness. So, what was it then that made you decide that you wanted to join the military and specifically the branch that you chose?
Uh, I grew up in the Air Force. The first 10 years of my life, my father was a cook in the Air Force. So I grew up going to the military elementary schools, living on base, living off base. I did not want to be a part of the military. That was not a life that I was going to choose. Fast forward many years later, I'm 26. Doing fairly well, but I also felt like I was stuck and needed to be a part of something bigger than myself. Needed something to provide a little more purpose than my own ambitions. And so I decided to join the Army. Found out that one of my brothers was going in to be a combat engineer, and we had the opportunity to play with explosives. And so I decided that sounds like a lot of fun, and why not? We'll give it a try. So I went into basic in '98 at 26 years old.
Oh my gosh. So, do you get a lot of grandpa and
Oh
that
yeah,
kind of thing? Oh,
oh
yeah.
yeah.
What was going through your mind when you first got there and you met your drill instructors? What was happening in your head?
I enjoyed basic myself. I really enjoyed the personal challenge that it provided as far as getting myself into better physical shape. I went in with a 42-inch waist and came out with a 36-inch waist. So for me, that
Goodness.
was quite a a change. Um, and I grew personally a lot during the experience of boot camp
Yeah.
and AIT. I understood most of the psychology games that were being played, especially with the drill sergeants. And I was actually the same age and a little bit older than a couple of the drill sergeants, and had come from some of the similar backgrounds. So I had a lot of things in common with them. Um, we weren't exactly friends because of the fraternization issues that would have become part of it, but I was on friendly terms with most of my drill sergeants. And I really enjoyed it. And I was one of the guys that was a little bit morbid and sat back and laughed at the kids that were coming out of high school thinking they were the tough ones on the block. And 2 weeks in, they're the ones crying in bed for their mom and wondering, is this, can I get through this? And why did I do this? And
Yeah.
so, but for me, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the experience and the, like I said, the personal growth that came out of it for me.
Did you, before you went in, did you have an opportunity to talk to your dad about his time and kind of what to expect?
No, I was estranged from our father.
Okay.
He was he was a perfect example of what a father should not be.
Mm,
In a lot of ways, he was an example of how not to be as a human being.
okay. That's
And
fair.
so that relationship for me was severed when I was 14, and I tried to get in contact with him after my oldest son was born, and decided that relationship was never going to be acceptable, and I could not be able to try and redevelop any kind of relationship with him. So that was never part of the picture.
So you went through your basic training kind of blind in what to expect.
No, because I had friends that had gone through the military, or that
Okay.
were in the military, had gone through basic. Um, and I had an idea of what I was going to be looking at even before I joined the military. And so going into the Army, for me, it was no big thing. I was ready for the challenge, and I knew what I was walking into.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite training, gas chamber, marksmanship, any of that?
Um, I don't know if I really had a favorite. I had some very memorable experiences, such as doing the final gas chamber qualification for my deployment, where my squad leader had accidentally forgotten to bring my gas mask because I was part of the setup crew and part of, you know, so yeah, having to walk into the gas chamber without the mask on and do everything I'm supposed to be doing, and then show that I can be able to, still function as a, normal, I don't know what you call it, but do what I'm supposed to do and walk out of the gas chamber was, it was kind of fun.
That is pretty funny. So you graduate and you go into AIT. And
Mhm.
what was your MOS then?
I was a combat engineer.
You were.
12
Okay, the same as
Bravo.
your friend.
Yeah, at the time, 12 Bravo. I believe now it's been reclassed as 21 Bravo, but it's a demolition specialist.
Okay. All right. And so tell me a little bit about AIT and what that training was like for you.
That was far more relaxed than boot camp because we had already gone through that. We had graduated boot camp, so it was more of a classroom environment. Yeah, we still did our 10-mile ruck marches. We still did our field exercises. Obviously, learning how to work with explosives, learning how to disarm mines. If we were in a situation where we had to clear a minefield, what do we look for? Basic skills that we needed to know as a combat engineer to be able to function and do our jobs.
Right, right. And I guess the question I would have is, how long was AIT for you?
AIT for us was 3 months.
Okay,
If I
so
remember
not
right.
all that long, really.
No, it's not. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to be a combat engineer. Um, it's if you're a little bit smarter than infantry, then you'll
You'll do well.
yeah, you'll do fine.
That's great.
I think the ASVAB requirement for combat engineer was 10 points higher than it was for infantry. So it's not like going into military intelligence where you had to have a much higher ASVAB score.
Right, right. You you do your 3 months in AIT
Mhm.
and you graduate from that. Where do you go from there?
I was in the reserves.
Okay.
So I went from Salt Lake City to Fort Leonard Wood and did all of my basic and AIT there, and then came back to Salt Lake City to resume my civilian career and my 1 weekend a month and two weeks a year thing that everybody says is typical for reserves. Same thing with National Guard. The only difference is reserves is federal level, where Guard is state level.
And what were you doing in your civilian career? What was that?
I had a background in sales and marketing and
Okay.
business development. So I sold everything from credit card processing services to, um, oh man, I've done window washing, I've done equipment sales, I've done business to business sales, retail sales. That's what most of my experience was in. Did marketing, website development, pretty much, a lot of that spectrum for work.
And then your choice of MOS is just like way
Yeah,
over here.
completely opposite. Yeah, there is so little civilian side that translates with with my MOS that unless you know people that are in the demolitions industry, and are able to afford to go back to school for civilian demolitions, there's nothing there that actually translates over.
Right, right.
And so trying to do demolitions civilian side coming out of the military is nearly impossible for most people.
Yeah. It is really difficult trying to translate certain MOSs
Yes.
into a
That's
civilian
wonderful.
career. Absolutely. Absolutely. um, okay, so you're back in Salt Lake
Mhm.
and you're doing, how long were you just doing your every 2 week or 1 week or 2 days or whatever it was?
I enlisted in '98, and I didn't see any kind. I was on active duty orders off and on from 2001 through 2004 when I was deployed, and then we shipped to Fort Lewis in I believe August of 2004, and then we left for Iraq. I believe in October of 2004. And then from there, we went from Kuwait into Iraq January of 2005.
Okay, let's go back just a little bit. So
Mhm.
you said you were deployed from 2001 to 2004?
I was on active duty orders off and on from the time the tower
Okay.
got hit until I deployed.
So
One of the
with
units that I went, I had also moved to Bremerton, Washington during that time period. And I was sitting in my apartment in Bremerton, Washington when the towers got hit. And
okay.
because I was the only one that had base access at the time, the company that I worked for, I was the only one that was able to go on base and actually service the clients that we needed to work with. At that time as well, the company that I was with, which was a transportation company over there in Seattle, we were put on mobilization orders and told to pack our bags and get ready to go. And 6 weeks later, we were told to stand down and we weren't going to be going anywhere. But I ended up being put on orders for enduring freedom and did some stuff stateside in Bremerton, Fort Lawton, and then moved back to Salt Lake. And again, was put on orders under Enduring Freedom at Fort Douglas here in Salt Lake, and then went back to the engineer unit shortly after, and then was deployed.
Okay. Um, and so the first place that you deploy to is Afghanistan?
Mm-mm.
Iraq.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my one and only deployment.
Okay. All right. And what was going through your mind when you step off that plane? Like, what was your first thoughts?
Um, I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. I had volunteered to go. I volunteered to change my MOS from demolitions to doing asphalt concrete work, and go with a battalion that we belonged to at that point, the 321st Engineer Battalion. They were part of the 70th RRC, and back when that was still the structure for the reserve components. Um, I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. I don't think any of us really knew what to expect, and it was just kind of take it a day by day and just see where things go. Because you don't know what you're going to experience and how your life is going to change,
Right.
even while you're sitting in country, because things change from day to day.
Right. And did you have an opportunity then to mingle with the civilians there, or were you stuck on base? How did that play out?
Um, I injured myself early on when we were in Kuwait. Um, I was dealing with a very stressful situation. I had discovered that my wife at the time had a mutual friend who was playing father and husband to her kids.
Oh, goodness.
And I was told to just deal with it because I had abandoned her and she expected me to be able to support her and her boyfriend and everything else while I was away. I also had a personal beef with my immediate leadership, which made things challenging as well. And so I was not in a good frame of mind when we were preparing for our convoy. I lost track of where I was at, stepped out of the side of a 916, which is an oversized semi, and hooked my leg on the way down, bounced off of my head, ended up with a severe brain injury. And we think that's when I also separated the cartilage between my in my hip and actually dislodged that from my joint.
Oh,
So it was I had a very interesting beginning to my deployment. We did our convoy, and I went from being able to run, do the PT test, run 6.5, 7 minute miles without thinking, to not being able to walk 100 meters in less than 2 weeks.
oh my gosh.
And
Oh,
so my life changed dramatically right there before we even got into Iraq. Most of my time, because of my injury and trying to prove to my chain of command that I wasn't faking it, I spent my entire deployment on base, working with guarding some of the locals that worked on there at Anaconda. We were armed escort for the locals that were there, doing tower guard, doing monitoring other equipment that we ran as far as the asphalt mixing plant and stuff like that. So my entire deployment was spent on base, and I didn't have the opportunity to actually go off base because of my injuries.
mm. How did now? Not the first veteran that I've talked to that has stated that their command didn't believe them about injuries, not in the slightest. Um, and I can only imagine how that went over with you mentally. Um,
It took its toll on me. About halfway through deployment, just prior to coming home for leave, I was actually put on suicide watch, and I had to get cleared by one of the base psychologists before they would allow me to even carry my weapon on base and be able to do my job, basically.
did they put you on like any kind of pain meds? Did they do an MRI? What did they were they able to find all of that at the time?
Everything that they did over there came back inconclusive. They couldn't see any definitive damage with my hip. So the medical staff there, they didn't know what to do because there was no physical damage that they could see doing the X-rays. They didn't do MRIs, they didn't do CAT scans or anything like that. I was supposed to be flown into Baghdad for a MRI, but my chain of command put a stop to that because, if I'm faking my injury, then there's no need to waste the time and money to send me into Baghdad to get an MRI. And they just assumed that I was dealing with maybe arthritis or this was all psychological. I was given anti-inflammatories, taking Tylenol. I didn't want any actual pain medication.
Right.
Um, and it really wasn't an option in being deployed and being in a combat zone. They don't want people on pain meds. And so I dealt with it the best that I could and made the best of a bad situation as good as I was able to during the time.
Wow. It always I understand where leadership is trying to root out those who truly just don't want to be there. Right. That being
Mhm.
said, it's really tough. Being in that situation, out of my mouth would have been, "Are you my doctor? Are you a doctor? Where's your PhD?" Right. It's
Well,
like, come on now.
yeah, but at the same time, one of the most difficult things to deal with, especially, and I don't know if it's any different now. I've heard that it is. I've heard that it isn't. Um, when you are no longer able to be of use to the mission, things become very different.
Yes.
And it's not so much of being able to tell your commander, hey, are you a doctor? Can you tell me what's going on? If you have medical staff that, one, are overwhelmed, don't have the equipment they need to be able to do a proper diagnosis, or they misdiagnose somebody just because of human error, and your commander comes back and says, okay, well, we have this, you're saying this, but you're supposed to do this. Where's that balancing point? Case in point with my TBI, my brain injury from 4.5 foot bounce. I could not remember 10 minutes later what I was supposed to be doing. So I had to carry around a notebook, and I would have to write down on a notepad everything that I needed to do during the day or the following day. And I would have to refer to that constantly to be able to know what I was supposed to be doing. I failed to write down a accountability formation that had been called, and I didn't remember that we were supposed to have that. And so I show up back at the barracks half an hour later because I went to the PX to get some food and toiletries and stuff like that. And I'm being faced with an Article 15 for failure to obey a lawful order because I had missed the accountability formation. I failed to write it down. I completely forgot about it. So I actually ended up having to go in front of battalion, in our battalion JAG, to say, okay, this is what's going on. This is why I failed to report for the formation. And they threw the Article 15 out and told my chain of command to knock it off. They were not allowed to continue to try and take my E5 away because I failed to maintain my military bearing, and because I had failed to follow proper commands or lawful commands while we were in a combat zone. And so there's a lot of different moving parts that come into that, and not everybody is able to really look at things objectively when you're trying to manage the situation on a day-by-day basis.
Right. I love how, you're seeing that whole picture after everything that you had to deal with. And
Well, I've had 20 years to analyze it.
yes, but I know me, I know how I am. And yeah, I hold a grudge. So, and on top of that, like I've dealt with watching my son go through the medical process, and trying to hit him with malingering and telling him he's a liar and a faker and there's nothing wrong with him. And so I understand what you're saying, and it doesn't surprise me, but it frustrates the heck out of me, because unless they're in your shoes, or a doctor who can actually make that call, and regardless of what, you might have a light duty chit, but it doesn't mean anything because they're like, oh, well, we can do whatever we want.
Yeah. Well, even after we got back the end of 2005 and I was put on med hold, they misdiagnosed me at Fort Lewis. Even with the MRI machines and everything else, they assumed that what was showing up in the MRI was a cyst on my hip. And there should be no issue with dealing with a torn labrum, which is what they believed was the case. And I should be able to get used to it and be able to work with it and everything else. And when it became apparent that that was not going to be the case, I made the decision to accept a medical discharge, a medical retirement. It was not easy, and it was probably one of the more difficult decisions that I've had to make because I was willingly giving up an opportunity that I had to actually go into an MI unit and do something completely different that I wanted to actually be involved with and be a part of. But I was also put in a position where I felt I was being given an option of either being non-deployable and non-promotable for the rest of my career, or I willingly hang up my uniform.
Right. Which,
And that was, to this day, that still was a difficult decision for me to make.
right. It is tough. And especially when, I mean, you volunteered, right? It wasn't
Mhm.
something that you were drafted into. You made that conscious decision to join. And so to go through what you had to go through and make that decision is terrible when you don't have anybody fighting for you on that end, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I am so sorry that you had to go through that because, and then with everything else you had going on, right? So that just makes it that much worse. So,
Yeah, I tell people that I'm one of the lucky ones that came back from my deployment bankrupt, divorced, and disabled.
right, man.
So I got the
It's like the trifecta.
Yeah. So, and I mean, life could have been so much worse. We had planned on celebrating Wheels Up when we left Iraq, and we came home with a 19-year-old in the cargo hold that was 2 weeks from going home.
Wow.
So, yeah, it could have been a lot worse.
It could have been, but it's not easy.
Mhm.
I'm assuming there's a lot of survivor's guilt with that. And even though you may not have been present or anything, he was there at that time with you.
I don't know about the survivor's guilt. Reality for me became completely different. When you're being shot at and you're not being hit, or you watch a mortar come in and land 50 meters from where you're walking and it does not detonate because they forgot to actually arm the mortar before they launched it, or you watch a rocket come in or an RPG come in and you see where it hits and it's anywhere between 50 to 100 meters of where you're standing, and you carry on like that's no big deal, and it doesn't affect you, that makes life completely different. And you see life completely differently with that kind of reality. To be shot at and you're being shot at, but the rounds are missing you and you just kind of sit there and you're sitting on the back porch smoking and talking with some of your friends and you're being shot at and you're like, okay, well, we're not getting hit. We're just going to sit here and continue smoking and talking. And there's no, we don't see there's any danger. That creates a completely different reality. And your way of thinking, at least for me, was completely changed, and it's still completely different.
So you decide you're going to take the medical discharge route.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And did they provide you with any kind of resources on being able to transition back into civilian life?
No. It was more of a, here's your pink slip, good luck, and we'll let the VA take care of you.
Ugh. Oh.
And by the way, here's the forms you need to fill out.
And make sure you check all your boxes on everything that needs returned.
Yeah. I had to fend for myself when I was released. I spent about a month in Fort Hood going through the med board process, and then being given my discharge orders and everything else. And then I was turned over to, told, here's the forms you need to fill out for the VA. This is how you apply for it. This is who you talk to. And I ended up having to work with the VFW to actually get anywhere with my VA claim. And it took 3 years to be able to actually get that done. And it was a very, I would say pulling teeth from an alligator that you're trying to wrestle would have been easier than trying to get my VA benefits started.
That's
And
crazy.
it is substantially easier for most people now, because the system is definitely built a little bit better, and some of the information that we're able to give other veterans to help them out is significantly better than it was back in 2004, 2005. But it can still be extremely difficult for some veterans because you still have to be able to have your medical records and prove your
Yes.
injuries and prove everything else. When I was medically discharged, they initially gave me a 0% disability, and then gave me my it wasn't a medical retirement at that point. They gave me a medical discharge. It was honorable, so there was no issue there. And then like I said, I was turned over to the VA and tried to put my life together and figure out what I was going to do and how I was going to handle things when I was discharged the end of 2006.
Goodness. So it took 3 years
Mm-hmm.
to go. Did they? So when they finally rate you, can I ask where they rated you at?
My initial rating was at a 40% because at that point I had to have one of my hips replaced. My left hip that I had injured when I was in Iraq, a year and a half after I was medically discharged, they went in orthoscopically to take a look at my hip and see what was going on. And they realized that I had done so much damage to my hip that there was no way to save it. So they did a revisement, which is a partial hip replacement. And 6 months later, they had to pull it out and do the full-on hip replacement because my body actually rejected the first one.
Oh, wow.
And so it was a fun process to go through that. So that was done the end of 2008. 2009, I believe, is when the VA gave me a 40% on my disability. And then 2011, the military came back and they said, well, we made a mistake with your medical discharge. We're going to go ahead and award you 30% disability. And we're also giving you your full military retirement, and that is being backdated. And then the VA looked at me and they said, oh, okay, well, because of your hip replacement, because of other things, we're going to go ahead and increase your disability rating at that point to, I think, 70%. Between 2006 and 2012, I went through an average of 2 surgeries a year between my shoulders and ultimately ended up having both hips replaced, as well as the mental health aspect of going through such a dramatic change for me and having to adjust to a completely different life. During that time, I also went back to school. I had to start completely over and worked my way through an MBA the middle of 2012.
That
Rather.
that couldn't have been easy, right? I mean, because a hip replacement in and of itself takes quite some time to.
Yeah, it takes about 6 months to a year to actually recover from the hip replacement.
And you had 2, well, 3, if you count the one that was rejected.
Yeah, my left hip was replaced twice. My right hip, I tore the labrum in my right hip as a result of compensating for issues with my left hip. They went in, they fixed that. 6 months later, I was playing with the dog, threw a ball, twisted wrong, and completely blew out the cartilage in the labrum. So they had no choice but to go in and replace my right hip as well at that point.
The 70% that they ultimately rated you at, did that include the rating for your TBI?
No, because at that point, the TBI was no longer an issue. I went through about 2.5 years of cognitive therapy to be able to get to where I could actually function on a regular basis and not have to put everything into a calendar to remember what I needed to do the next day.
Wow. Is that something that they paid for? Or did that have, okay,
That was
so they,
covered by the VA.
good, good, good.
So
Um,
the medical
wow.
side of the VA that I didn't have much of an issue with. The medical side has taken care of me fairly well. The benefit side is where I had most of the issues.
And trying to get those benefits to begin
Mm-hmm.
with. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Um, I've heard that from a lot as well. And I know several veterans that it's like, as you said, pulling teeth and just to, you know, get anywhere with it and having to write letters and, you know, be able to locate that documentation. And I do know that not always when you go in and, you know, see a doctor medically for, you know, while you're in, um, that they don't always get the notes right. They don't always get things put in there.
Well,
Um,
they're human. They're going to make mistakes.
exactly. And so it's really hard sometimes, you know, to say, well, no, this happened. And they're like, well, wait, it's not in any of your medical records.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I always say, you know, to people, make sure that you keep your own little notebook of what
Yeah.
happened and when it happened as well, because it's possible that your medical records could be incomplete.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, my medical records were lost twice during transfers when I was in the reserves.
wow.
So yeah, imagine having to go back and rebuild all of your medical files twice. Having to go through and get all of your immunizations again because they
Ugh.
lost your shot record. I mean, some of the incompetence that we deal with in the military is just absolutely unbelievable. Uh, but we learn how to deal with it, we learn how to counter it, and we learn how to correct issues that are created by other people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So you get your MBA, and
Mm-hmm.
then what do you do with that?
I spent the following year trying to find gainful employment that would allow me to use my MBA. To find to get to find out that I'm overqualified because of my military leadership experience, my previous civilian management and business ownership experience. Now my education puts me as being overqualified. I also have to disclose that I do have physical limitations that I have to work with. If I'm going to sit at a desk, I do need to have a specific ergonomic chair. That way I can actually sit and do my job without my feet going to sleep on me because of the hips being replaced. So that has to be addressed. I'm 53. I'll be 54 in May. So, even being, 44, 45 years old, you're getting into that gray area of, well, do we really want to hire somebody who we really should be starting at scratch, but he's not, he's above those qualifications. So I got tired of being passed over and being told I didn't quite fit what they were looking for. I was overqualified. And I started doing woodworking as a hobby to keep myself busy, and that is now what I'm doing as a business.
Wow. So what kind of woodworking do you do?
I do everything that I do is custom, one-on-one with the customer. It could be making a custom shelf. It could be doing a custom shadow box, coin holder,
Oh, nice.
um, jewelry box, keepsake box, um, something that is designed and put together for each specific client.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Mhm.
Is there a place that people can go? Do you have a website for what you do?
Yeah, my website is very bare bones at the moment. Because of being in the middle of buying another house and moving, everything is completely torn down. I'm not doing any work at the moment. But if they go to tiltedknot.com,
I'm going to put that up there.
tiltedknot.com, you can actually find my website and see some of the stuff that I do. I'm also on Instagram, and I have a YouTube channel that I started showing some of the stuff that I make, more as a, hey, look, I've had both hips replaced. Both of my shoulders are completely destroyed. I do have some very definite limitations, but I've learned how to work with those limitations. So if you can see what I'm doing, maybe it can help another veteran see that, hey, I might be able to try something like that, or find my own passion and get myself more active and busy and keep myself going and keep myself occupied and do something that is productive for myself or for my community that can be a benefit.
That's wonderful. Okay, let's give me that website again.
It is tilted knot, tiltedknot.com.
Okay, let's see if I can find this. Let's see. I have a oh wait, I think I found you. Online store. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share that just so people can see where it is. Okay. Make sure everybody can see
Yeah,
that.
that's the online store. The YouTube channel is also Tilted Knot.
Okay. Just like this,
Mm-hmm.
TILTEDKNOT,
Yes.
and on YouTube.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So, non-military branch. So you do fiberboard, plywood, wood.
That's one of the products that I am going to start offering as far as a manufactured product. Um, and once I get moved to get my shop set back up, I will expand this. I put this up very quickly because I had a couple of people that needed to order something for Christmas. These are DoD. I have both DoD and I have DoD military and non-military insignias. So if you know somebody who works for the Department of Justice, for example, and you want to have a personalized plaque for them, I have the Department of Justice emblem that I can put together and personalize it for them for to go into a picture frame or on a desk or something of that nature.
Nice.
But I will be expanding that once I've got my shop put back together and I'm actually getting up and going.
Yeah, yeah. It's difficult when you're trying to move all the equipment and everything else, and then you got to get it set up, and so it takes a lot of time.
It
Um,
does. And unfortunately, this is the second time in a year that I've had to shut everything down and move. I found out that I was getting divorced a little over a year ago.
oh no.
And so that that definitely that threw a wrench in the monkey works for everything too. So the place that I've been renting, I was fortunate enough to find somebody that was willing to let me do the woodworking out of the garage. And because of being in the winter, not knowing whether or not we were going to have workable weather here in Salt Lake City, I tore everything down a month and a half ago so that I wouldn't be out in the garage freezing my ass off trying to get everything packed up and ready to go.
Yeah, yeah. Good thinking. Um, you have, and you've been doing the woodworking now for how long?
About 10 years now.
Okay.
So, yeah, I started working from doing just simple plywood and pocket hole stuff to um, doing actual, joinery and dovetails and, whatever, doing custom desks, cabinets, stuff of that nature.
And how did you learn all of this? Is this self-taught?
Most of it, yes. It's stuff that I learned watching a lot of YouTube videos, and putting together a whole lot of stuff that ended up being burned, or just thrown away,
Right,
and
right.
just over time teaching myself what to do. And about 4 years ago, I decided to take a class at Salt Lake Community College and doing furniture design and furniture building because I didn't think that my skills were really where they should be. And found out during that process that I had actually gotten to where I was on par with my instructors. I just needed a little more confidence
Okay.
and realized that what I was putting together was of decent quality where, yeah, it was something that I could actually sell.
Wow.
And I
Nice.
had been making, I've got a 4 foot by 8 foot bookshelf that I made for one of my nephews out of oak that was made 4 years ago, and it still today looks, like, and he's moved 3 times with it. It still looks absolutely perfect. So, it's over time you start realizing that yes, what you're doing is actually of a decent value and quality. And I decided to go ahead and open myself up to selling stuff just to make some money out of it and try and recuperate what I've invested into tools and materials and everything else.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. If anybody out there in the chats or who's listening and hasn't commented, if you have some questions for Dan, please go ahead and put those in the comments now. Um, Dan, if you could, do you have any
Mhm.
words of wisdom for anybody who is might be interested in joining the military?
Make sure you understand the job that you're going to accept and the job that you're going after. Um, I had the opportunity to take on other jobs with, other MOSs in the Army. My recruiter wanted me to go into the mailroom, which I didn't want to do. And I told her no, I wasn't going to do that. One of her boss actually wanted to get me into an MI unit, military intelligence unit from the get go as well, and I told him no, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to retain my destructive childhood nature, and I wanted to be able to blow stuff up. And so I told them that it's either I get to do what I want to do, or I walk out that door and I will go someplace else.
Right, right.
When I was in high school, I almost signed the paperwork to join the Navy, and decided at the last minute that I really didn't want to do that. And I wanted to pursue things on the civilian side instead. And I'm glad I went the route that I did. Going in a little bit older, I was a little bit more. I don't want to. I don't know. I don't want to say that I was more mature, because I still don't quite consider myself to be mature. But I was a little more. I understood a little bit more of what I wanted to get out of it than I would have when just getting out of high school.
Right, right. Absolutely. Right. You live a couple more years and you're like, yeah, you've seen some things that you want to do, things you don't want to do,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand that completely. And then let's see if we've got any. Ron Wayne, he has always got the greatest things to say. Test your accuracy on the like button at the end of the show, please. If you haven't already, we would love that. Also, here is the YouTube channel for Dan. So go out and give it a like, subscribe. I'm sure he'd appreciate that
I
as well.
appreciate it, guys.
Yes.
Once I'm supposed to close on the house on the 23rd and start moving, get everything moved that week. And I'm planning about a month to get my shop set back up. Then I'll start getting videos put back up on YouTube and getting going. One of the problems that I ran into with the house that I'm renting is the owner of the house and his parents were not supposed to be living in the basement when I rented the house.
Oh,
And it was supposed to be a completely different setup. Things were supposed to be handled differently. And the sound transfer between downstairs and upstairs is absolutely horrid. And it got to the point where I could not find a time to actually edit my videos, do the voiceover, where my microphone was not picking up their conversations downstairs or what they were listening to or watching. And so I made the decision to quit producing videos. And so it's hurt my channel substantially. But once I get back into my own place and get everything rolling again, I should be able to be putting out videos about every 3 weeks.
oh, that's wonderful. And Ron says, best of luck in all your endeavors, Dan, and
Well, thank
thank
you,
you for
Ron.
your service. And Jason has said thank you for your service as well.
I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, we're happy to have you and love to be able to keep in touch and know how things are going for you. So,
Yeah,
uh,
definitely.
if you want to hang tight for me, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up with everybody. And so, for those of you who are familiar with the channel, I have a guest lined up for next weekend by the name of Tom Davis. And he is actually running for Congress and for the U.S. House of Representatives. So we're excited to have him come on next Sunday. So please join me on this channel. And again, we keep it non-political, but just throwing that out there so you can kind of get a feel for, his background, etc. So, anyway, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for coming out and watching, putting, commenting. And please, again, make sure that you hit that like button, you share, and throw a comment in there. And if you are enjoying what you're seeing in the conversations that we're having, put it out there. We love to hear them, and I respond to every comment. So, Dan, thank you so very much for being here today.
You're
And
welcome, and
again,
thank you.
thank you to everybody for coming out, and we will see you next Sunday, 6 p.m. Central Time.
Have a wonderful night, guys.